Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Building the Bireme video with Vaskalos. Today we're going to tackle a couple of things. One, you'll notice I have a balsa wood filler for the tail here. Well, we also need to do the same for the nose. So I went down and got this piece of balsa wood and we're going to put it in. The other thing we should get to is the planking for the bottom. But first I want to do some of the smaller planking on top to get a feel for it. And of course, we are going to talk about ancient Greek naval warfare and the Battle of Salamis. So, let's get into it. Alright, first things first, we got to get this block on the front here, and you'll see me using the tried and true method of putting it on and tracing the outline. Now, something interesting to note, I've worked with balsa wood plenty of times before, but this block was way more dense than what I was expecting. I've also changed up the glue. I'm now using a super glue. The dry time on it is significantly faster, but it is way thinner than the other glue I was using before, so I do get a little bit of overspill a few times. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to finish up some more of the inside planking. First things first, I'd like to use the eyeball it 4,000 times before gluing it in method. It seems to work for me. And of course, once I have a plank that fits, before gluing it in, I like to use it as a template to cut the other planks. Xerxes amasses a huge army and assembled an equally large fleet in order to attack Greece. He thought for sure that there would be no victory for the Greeks when facing the military might of Persia. There was just one issue, however, and that was how to get the army across the Hellespont. Now, the downside to the watery superglue that I'm using is that I occasionally glue my fingers to the planks. Thankfully, the footage is sped up so much that you can't really see me do it. Well, except for there. The Hellespont is a narrow strait of water separating Greece and the Persian Empire. Here's a map. The strait is about 1,300 meters wide, or a little over 3/4 of a mile, at the point Xerxes chooses to cross. And something to keep in mind is that the strait can be very temperamental and quite dangerous. The boards on one side are done. Now I flip the model over and do it to the other side. To get his army across, Xerxes had 2 pontoon bridges built to span the Hellespont. But Herodotus tells us that they were both destroyed in a storm in what was thought of by the Greeks as divine retribution to the desecration of Greece's borders. But remember, I said no man or God would stop Xerxes. Now that the planks are in place, they kind of stick out a little bit and aren't really even, so I need to trim up the edges. This was quite nerve-wracking as the saw cuts through these planks really fast, and I'm worried about cutting into the inside planks. So I just get real close and then finish it off with the knife. If you decide to do this model at home yourself, just remember, slow and steady wins the race. You can always remove wood, but it's much harder to put wood back on. Now that the nose blocks are securely in place, I need to carve them down. Now, this process took quite a long time. I had to break out the big guns with some bigger, sharper knives, and I'm not going to subject you to that insane amount of time that it took to do this. So we're just going to jump to when it's done. Right now. Nose is done. Now I need to do some more of the internal planking up front here. As you can see, the technique that I'm using is the same that I use at the rear, which is measure, template, cut, glue, occasionally glue my finger, and trim. Xerxes was not wanting to let an insolent waterway god show him up. He had the waters of the Hellespont whipped by his men. He also threw shackles into the water as a way to enslave the god of the Hellespont. Oh, and he also had his bridge builders executed as well. I guess you gotta cover all the bases, huh? A final bridge was built across the Hellespont, using his ships as the pontoons facing the current and utilizing extra anchors. This new bridging technique apparently worked as his army was able to cross over. Or the sea god was put in its place by the shackles and the whipping. You know, whatever works. with his army finally across the Hellespont and his navy following him offshore, nothing was to stand between Xerxes and his conquest of Greece. And there you have it, the internal planking is done, which took a lot longer than I expected. So we'll start the external planking next episode. And until next time, I'll see you then.